Okay, we're going to talk about layers and just adjusting layers and layer names, all that kind of stuff. We're going to just focus on pretty much organizing our composition for down the road, or if you're going to hand this file off to somebody else so they can kind of know what's going on. As you'll notice, Photoshop names everything very generically, and for some things it's okay. Like this is a pretty small project. There's not a lot going on. You can figure out pretty quickly what's happening. Um, for bigger projects, it'll be more of an issue. So what we want to do is change these things that say layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, all that stuff to actual names that are English that make sense to us. So to do that, let's start there. I'm going to um, turn the eyeball on and off and just kind of figure out what things are. And let's start down here. So this is the father and son. So let's go up to layer properties, and this little box pops up and it already has it highlighted for you. It's layer 3. So you don't have to click on anything, you can just start typing. And we're going to call this father and son. Okay, so say click OK. You can see over here this layer is now named father and son. Really super easy. This is our sunset ATV guy. So let's go back to layer properties, and let's go to ATV sunset. Okay. Alright. So that guy's done. This is the dunes. The ATV's down the dunes. So we're going to go to layer properties, and we're going to type in ATV dunes. Okay, now I also want to show you one more thing in the layer properties, is this color. Now this doesn't actually do anything into our composition. This is just a way to denote the layer. So if you want to denote all your pictures, like maybe you have approval, maybe you have a green light to use this picture, or maybe you don't have a green light and you need to get this picture approved, you can turn it red. Now when you click on this red, what it actually does is it just changes this color around the eyeball. So if you were to send this to somebody else and say, hey, here's my layout, and there's 4 red layers, I don't know if we're allowed to use those pictures, but would you get back to me on that? Something like that. That would be a way to denote those. Or if you have a composition where you want to know everything in the yellow layer is for a specific thing, you can do that. So Photoshop, it's just really for us. Photoshop doesn't care. It'll just remember the names and the color. So I'm going to turn that off because we don't need to denote anything. Okay, and then we have our logo here. Now I'm going to do this naming a little different. So instead of going up to layer properties, a quicker way for me is just to double click on the name. So I'm just going to double click there and type in logo. Okay. Now if you do misspell anything, or you want a non-English word to describe these things, that's not a problem. This isn't being shown in our composition anywhere. This is just for your organization. So if you misspell it, it'll be misspelled. There's no spell checking these layers, anything like that. So just be aware of that. Now you'll see that there's 2 type layers. Now these 2 type layers, we never actually typed this in. What happened is Photoshop, as we use our type layer, as we typed in ATV safety training, our type layer actually was named that from Photoshop. It tried to be smart for us and name it that. And 99% of the time, that's totally fine. But just that you know, you could change this to be whatever you want. So you could go up to layer properties and change this to title if you wanted to. It only changes it in the layer panel, and it'll stay named title no matter what you change the text to. So if that's what you want, that's great. If you don't name it that, whatever you change the text to, if you change it to safety class, it would change the safety class over here. So I kind of like it better not naming the text layers, just because then I know they're updated. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and to get my ATV safety training back there. Okay, so now I've named all my layers. Let's talk about moving the layers around. You can see this father and son. I'm going to turn the eyeball off on one of those pictures. You can see the father and son image actually goes over into our right column. And the only reason this works right now is because these images are on top of this image. So if you imagine if you stacked these images on your table and you were arranging them on the card, it would just be like putting, one piece of paper on top of the other. It's basically how the layers work. So if I wanted the picture of the Father and the Son to come above and go over the logo in this example, all I would do is click and drag and move the Father and Son up. So let's do that. Let's click on the main image here. You actually don't want to click on the Father and Son. There will be some other squares sometimes in these layers. You want to click on the main image, and you want to click and hold your mouse button down. And as you do that, you get this little ghost. You can see that you're moving it around because you're holding your mouse button down. And as I move this up and down in the layers panel, you can see it bolds in between layers. Now that means that's where it's going to drop it. So it's letting you know you're getting close, and I want to drop it anywhere in there. So to drop it at the top, we want to go above the top layer, and then you get to the bold line there, and we want to let go, and you can see our picture now comes above the logo. Now if I turn on the ATV Sunset guy, he is below the Father and Son, so now he is also being clipped, so he's behind there. So real easy to do. You could actually drag Father and Son back down, or you could drag these three layers above Father and Son. So that's another way to do it. But we're gonna add a group, what's called a group, and we're gonna move it up that way. So I'll show you how to do that. So layer order, you can move these all around and just make sure that there aren't layers clipping things that you don't want. Like, we wouldn't want this image clipping the logo. Okay, so let's add a group and we're going to move all three of these above this one at one time when we move the group. Okay, so I'm going to click on my logo layer, and you can add a group anywhere you want. So let's go up to layer, let's go to new, and let's go to group, and you get what looks like a new layer dialog box, but it's actually a group. And what a group is basically it's like a folder in Windows. It's like a way to organize things. So I'm going to give this group a name. I'm going to call it right column. And you can see I abbreviated column because this is just for us to know what's going on. You can also change the color just like you can on a layer. If you don't have approval or you want to denote it somehow, you can do that. The mode, we want to usually keep this at pass-through and the opacity 100%. So this is going to use all the layers below it. It's not going to actually have any properties. So that's what we want unless we're doing something very specific. But just know that there are different modes you can do for your group. So I'm going to click OK. And you can see I get a right column group right in the middle. Now yours may have shown up higher or lower depending on what layer you were selected on. I was selected on the logo layer, so it put it right above that. If you were selected on the Father and Son layer, it would put it right above that, which is fine. Doesn't matter either way. So you can see we have what looks like a folder. It's called right column because we named it that, and it has this little triangle. And the triangle is actually how you show the layers that are in this folder. So you can see we don't have anything in our folder. When we push the triangle and it's pointing down, it should show layers that are in this folder. When it's pointing toward the folder, it's basically the folder's closed and it'll hide all the other layers. So let's put some layers in there and let's see what we're talking about. Okay, so we're going to move this logo layer into the right column layer, just like we were to move the Father and Son above a layer. The only trick here is when you drag it, the bold will be around the whole right logo, or the right column, and as soon as you see that, that means that it's actually going to go into that folder. So if I click and hold, and you can see I get a line in between, and then I get a square. So I actually want the square, because the square means it's going to go into that folder. If it's the line, it's going to go above it, or below it. If it's a square around it, it means it's going to go into that folder. And so right now it looks like it disappeared, but if I drop down my little triangle, you can see I have one layer in there, and you can tell it's in that folder because it's indented. Okay. So I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to add this dunes layer into the folder. So I'm going to click and drag up to the folder, and it doesn't matter if the folder is open or closed, you can drag stuff into it. So as you can see, there's a bold border around it. I'm going to let go of my mouse, and now that is in the right column. So if I hide this, you can see it hides those two layers for me. So there's one more layer I want to put in there, which is the sunset. So I'm going to click and drag and put the sunset in there. And again, it looks like it disappeared, but as we can see, we have our three items in that group. Now you have order in your group as well, so it's just a big piece of paper on top of each other. So if you wanted to put your ATV Dunes above your logo, all you have to do is click and drag until you get a line in between the folder and the logo, and that will move it up. You can see we can get clipping there. And that's not what we want, but you can move them around, so I'm going to move it back because it's not what we want. Okay, so I'm going to close this folder, and you can see I can turn my eyeball on and off just like I can on a layer, but it turns off all the layers underneath it. So it's controlling, it's that pass-through, it's controlling all the layers just as I do that. And that's a nice feature because you can tell what things are grouped. So the nice thing about this, if I have my right column selected, I'm going to click on that folder, and I'm going to drag it above the father and son because we want to actually have the column on the right be above that so that the clipping doesn't actually clip into our logo. So I'm going to click on the folder and drag it, and you'll see the bold line in between the layers, and I want it above the top layer. And as soon as I let go, you can see that now this father and son is below our right column. So really it's below these three layers, which are our right column. The nice thing about having this in a group is if I have my move tool and I'm actually selected on my group, I can move the three of those things together in tandem, which is really nice if you're working with a footer or a header or something like that. If you just need to nudge it around and move it around, makes it real easy to move all three things together. So I use groups all the time. You can also use nested groups, which is a group inside of a group. You can drag another group in there, so play with that. But that's pretty much your layer options. You want to try and name things, and you want to use groups the most you can. Okay?